Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're taking a slightly different approach. We're looking closely at something that might seem pretty ordinary on the surface,
Mhm.
just a collection of personal stories.
Right.
Our source material isn't, some complex scientific paper or a geopolitical analysis. It's actually a set of conversations, sort of structured to help practice basic language skills.
Yeah, like past tense, description, that kind of, yeah.
Exactly. But we're not here for a grammar lesson. For us, this is actually a fascinating window into how our brains hold on to information.
That's really the heart of it for this deep dive. These stories, they cover different kinds of experiences, like happy moments, learning something new, funny incidents, helping someone, travel, even challenging times. They seem simple, but they represent maybe 6 of the most effective ways we naturally anchor memories. They give us a kind of ready-made structure for learning.
So our mission today is to really pull apart why. Why are these specific types of stories so good for, quickly grasping new things and making sure that knowledge actually stays with you long term?
Precisely. We want to extract those cognitive insights.
And we're not just talking about remembering vocabulary words here.
No, not at all.
This feels like it could be a universal framework. Like you could apply this to learning a complex business strategy or maybe a new technical skill or even just understanding a complicated historical event.
That's the idea. The way these narratives are built seems to offer a blueprint, a proven one, for making any new information really stick, making it durable.
So the source material basically gives us 6, what did you call them? Memory anchors.
Yeah, 6 crucial memory anchors. And the really critical thing is each type doesn't just store the information flatly.
Right.
It activates different pathways in the brain, things tied to emotion or sensory details or the steps involved in doing something. It's like layering the information in different ways so it's easier to pull back out later.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. So let's start building this structure. Section 1, laying the foundation with positive feelings.
Right.
When we talk about learning that really lasts, neuroscience keeps pointing back to emotion, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Information that's just neutral, well, it often gets filtered out. It doesn't seem important.
But if you tie a new idea or fact to a good feeling,
Then you're essentially tagging it. You're
yes,
creating a high-priority retrieval cue. It's like your brain flags it with, the feel-good chemicals, dopamine, maybe oxytocin.
Okay, so let's look at the first example from the source, the Buster story.
Yeah, the dog story. It seems incredibly simple, almost trivial,
Right.
but it's activating a really powerful anchor related to connection and positive emotion.
And the details matter here, right? It's the sequence. The speaker talks about going to the park, Buster gets excited,
Wow.
chases a squirrel, but the squirrel scoots up a tree. Quick escape.
And that little moment, the chase failing, that's
Yeah.
key. It's a tiny bit of, like, low-stakes comedy, Buster's funny face looking up, then just sitting down like, oh, well.
Yeah.
That specific sequence is vital. It creates a mini narrative arc very quickly. So the memory isn't just a flat fact like I went to the park.
Right.
It's encoded around that little blip, that humorous moment where expectation wasn't met. That gives it a small, positive, emotional kick.
But that's not the main payoff, is it?
No, the real emotional glue, the thing that probably makes it stick long-term, that relational part, comes right after.
Okay, the resolution. Buster goes over to a little girl. She starts petting him. He puts his head on her lap.
Yeah, that final interaction,
Mm.
that's the bit described as a very sweet moment that made the speaker very happy. That's likely where the oxytocin, the bonding hormone, comes in.
So what's the learning mechanism here?
It shows that positive relational stuff is really sticky for memory. When you link new information to an experience that involves connection or shared positive feeling or even simple kindness,
Mm-hmm.
you're tapping into the brain's social wiring. These pathways are ancient, evolved for group survival, so memories tied to connection get prioritized. They're easier to recall.
Okay, so that's one type of happy anchor. The second happy story, the one about the restaurant, seems a bit different. It feels less about connection and more about, well, pure enjoyment.
Exactly. It shifts from that social anchor to something more maybe hedonistic
Yeah.
or purely sensory at least.
Right. The focus is intense on the food, the amazing pasta, specifically the details. Tomato sauce, a lot of cheese.
Mm. That physical pleasure, the deliciousness, creates a really strong multi-sensory memory cue. It's not just thinking about pasta. It's almost re-experiencing the taste, the smell, the feeling of satisfaction. It's episodic memory tied to senses.
But they mentioned more than just the pasta, didn't they? The atmosphere was part of it. Friendly people, smiles, calm music.
Yes, that's crucial. The whole environment was relaxing. It led to this overall feeling of deep contentment.
So what does that tell us?
It shows that when we use positive recall to encode information, it helps to bring in the whole context. So imagine you're learning something abstract, like, say, how a complex database works. If you can somehow link different parts of that abstract concept to distinct, pleasant contexts, maybe the specific cozy cafe where you figured out a problem, or even the taste of the coffee you were drinking,
I hear.
you're creating more pathways to retrieve that information.
Yeah.
You're using both episodic memory, the story of being in the cafe, and sensory memory, the taste, the smell, the feeling at the same time.
That makes a lot of sense. So positive anchors, whether relational or sensory, help get the information in. But these first two stories are about relatively easy, pleasant moments. The next set, the learning experiences, they bring in something else. The power of, well, struggling a bit.
Right. Now we move into what you might call the narrative of perseverance. Sometimes it's called the grit narrative.
Okay.
And this taps into a cognitive idea called desirable difficulty.
Yeah.
It basically suggests that if learning something is too easy, it might actually be too easy to forget. A bit of friction helps.
The baking bread story seems like a perfect example. The starting point is explicitly negative, maybe even a little embarrassing.
Yeah, the first loaf was hard, like a rock.
Huh. That hard rock isn't just a funny detail, is it? It's like a necessary failure point. It clearly marks the beginning of the struggle.
Exactly. It's the anchor for the failure. And that failure gives meaning to what comes next, the effort involved. This relates to something called the testing effect in learning science,
How so?
because the initial difficulty forces you to engage more deeply when you try to fix it. The story details the method. Watching videos, reading simple recipes, getting a feel for the dough, figuring out the oven temperature. It wasn't just passive learning,
Right, it was active problem solving.
active problem solving. And the success, finally getting that soft, delicious bread, feels earned because of the initial struggle.
So the main takeaway isn't just, now I can bake bread.
No, the deeper, more transferal lesson encoded in that story is metacognitive. It's the realization that, hey, even if something's tough at first, I can actually learn and improve if I stick with it.
Metacognition. Thinking about your own thinking, right? But here it's more like narrating the process.
Precisely. It's taking those actions that might seem automatic once you know them, like mixing dough, and turning them into an explicit strategy you can describe and follow. Check the consistency, watch the temperature, be patient. The story encodes the value of that process, of testing things out, using a very concrete sensory example.
And we see this again, but in a totally different context with the fixing the computer story.
Yeah, technical challenge this time.
The problem is clear and relatable. Slow computer, programs crashing,
Yeah.
frustrating.
Very. And then comes the decision point. I decided to try and fix it myself. That's a shift from just being annoyed to taking action, moving towards self-reliance.
That initial feeling of frustration probably makes the effort feel more worthwhile later.
I think so. It enhances the value of the solution. And again, the story emphasizes the process. Looking things up online, watching simple videos, seeking external knowledge, and then applying it methodically, cleaning things up, closing background programs. It mentions this took hours.
Right, it wasn't instant.
No. And the payoff isn't just the functional outcome of faster computer.
What's the real retention mechanism then?
It seems to be the internal feeling. I felt very proud. That feeling validates the effort. The story provides this satisfying arc. Frustration, research, structured effort, successful resolution. And that reinforces the underlying skill, the ability to tackle a technical problem yourself.
Okay, so if we pull section 1 together, it seems like for learning to really embed itself, you need one of two things. Either a strong, immediate, positive connection, like in the happy stories.
Right, the emotional tag.
Or you need this structured journey through difficulty, like in the learning stories, where the effort itself becomes part of the memorable narrative.
Exactly. Both approaches basically tell your brain, pay attention, this information is valuable, it's worth encoding properly and keeping around.
Okay, that brings us to section 2, and this is where things get maybe even more interesting. We're looking at surprise and social connection.
Yeah, this is where we start talking about really high-fidelity encoding, making memories vivid. And that often requires richer descriptive language and, crucially, these unexpected moments or emotional shifts.
Why is surprise so powerful for memory?
Neurologically, it's fascinating. When something totally unexpected happens, when an expectation is suddenly violated,
Hmm.
your brain basically hits the record button hard. It floods the system with attention resources. That jolt of surprise forces you to encode everything around that moment much more vividly.
Okay, let's apply that to the funny narrative section. The first one, the beach waves story.
Right. The setup is deliberately calm,
Hmm.
sunny day, playing ball, wading into shallow water to get it.
Yeah.
The expectation is easy, uneventful.
Bam.
Bam, the climax.
Huh.
A big wave, much bigger than anticipated, knocks the speaker over. They go face first into the water for a second. That's an immediate sensory shock.
And the description here is key, isn't it? They don't just say, I got wet.
No, the details are what make it stick. Wet hair, wet clothes, and that critical little detail, sand on the face.
Right.
That slightly gritty, uncomfortable, visceral sensation. That's what elevates it from just falling over into a high-fidelity memory trace. It's specific and sensory.
So it's like the brain's threat detection system. The amygdala gets involved even if it's not a real threat.
Sort of, yeah. It's the attention system responding to the unexpected. Even a harmless surprise, like a wave, makes the brain take an urgent, detailed snapshot of the event. And then there's the social element.
The shared laughter afterwards.
Exactly. Laughing together about it solidifies the memory socially. It engages mirror neurons, binding that personal episodic memory into a shared positive experience. It becomes a classic story to retell because it was funny together.
Okay, now compare that physical surprise to the other funny story, the singing supermarket incident. This feels more like social awkwardness.
Yeah, it's a violation of social expectations, not physical ones. The setup is very internal, very contained, looking for milk, headphones on, listening to music, thinking they're singing quietly to themselves.
Lost in their own world.
Totally. And the interruption is the jolt back to reality.
Mm-hmm.
A stranger, a woman, taps her shoulder, asks for eggs, and then the dawning realization, uh-oh, I think I was singing louder than I thought.
Huh. It's that little moment of embarrassment, isn't it? The little red in my face feeling. That's what makes it memorable and funny.
It is. We seem to be really wired to remember moments where we feel a bit exposed or vulnerable, even in minor ways. That slight internal physical reaction, the blushing, acts as a potent emotional tag for the memory.
So you raised this question earlier. Why are these small, funny, slightly embarrassing moments so sticky?
Well, I think it's because they involve such a rapid, high-contrast emotional shift. You go instantly from being in your private bubble, feeling calm and comfortable,
Mm-hmm.
to suddenly being observed, feeling slightly mortified in a public space. That sharp change in your emotional state seems to create a really robust memory trace. It locks in all the surrounding details, the music, the aisle, the fact she wanted eggs.
Yeah.
High-fidelity encoding.
Okay, so surprise and mild embarrassment are powerful encoders. Let's shift gears now to the helpful narratives. These seem to work differently, more about social reward.
Exactly. These stories tap directly into the brain's social reward system. They tend to follow a predictable structure that leads to a positive emotional payoff.
The first one, helping the older woman cross the street. It sets up a clear need.
Right. Busy street, woman looking lost, maybe scared. The action is simple, direct, and helpful. Offer an arm, walk across together.
And the key for memory retention here is the feedback loop.
Yes, the emotional feedback. It's likely linked to oxytocin release again, that feeling we get from pro-social behavior. The woman's direct affirmation, "You are a very good person," provides immediate external validation.
Which translates into that internal feeling. It made me feel so good.
That's the core. It translates a simple action into significant emotional meaning. The story reinforces the idea that even a small act of kindness can feel psychologically very important. This is powerful for embedding social rules or ethical understanding. You learn firsthand that certain actions feel good because they generate this reliable, positive internal state.
And the second helpful story, helping Mrs. Davis with the groceries in the cold. Similar structure, but maybe amplified.
I think so. The context heightens the need. It was last winter, very cold. She was struggling with heavy bags.
Yeah.
The intervention feels more necessary, maybe.
Going out quickly, carrying the bags inside for her.
And the immediate reaction, being called an angel, that's a big emotional reward right there.
Huge.
But what really seals this memory, I think, is the tangible shared reward afterward. Sitting together in the kitchen, sharing hot chocolate.
Ah, the sensory and social combined again.
Exactly. It brings warmth, comfort, and connection directly into the memory of the helpful act.
So, stepping back from these helpful stories,
Yeah.
what's the big takeaway for memory?
They really demonstrate that strong link between doing something functional for someone else
Mm.
and getting that immediate positive emotional feedback, that warm feeling inside, as the source sometimes puts it.
Right.
So if you can connect a new concept or a procedure, or even just a word you're learning, to an act of kindness and that resulting warmth,
Hmm.
you're creating this ethical, relational anchor. It makes the information feel intrinsically valuable, meaningful, and therefore much harder to forget.
Mm-hmm.
The story provides the reason why the behavior is good.
All right, so now we move into narratives that seem to demand more complexity. Travel stories and stories about overcoming challenges. These feel like they push beyond single emotional moments and need us to juggle more information.
They absolutely do. Travel narratives, in particular, are almost functionally designed to expand your descriptive toolkit and force your brain to process information from multiple senses at once.
How so?
Well, to really convey a sense of place, to make someone else feel like they were there,
Yeah.
you have to pull together different kinds of sensory input. You can't just list facts. You need to evoke the atmosphere. You have to fire up multiple memory channels simultaneously.
Let's look at the mountain town trip example. It's
Right.
interesting how it starts not with actions, but with how the environment felt.
Exactly. The description jumps straight to sensory input. The air was very fresh and clean. The trees looked so green.
That feels like a good example of using spatial and environmental details to encode the memory.
Perfect example. The recollection pulls together sight, green trees, colorful flowers, sound, small birds singing, and even that feeling, that somatic sense, fresh air, feeling peaceful and calm. The brain has to weave all this together to build the scene, and that creates many more potential retrieval cues compared to just remembering, say, a list of activities.
And then they add another layer, the taste element, trying local food, the special cheese, and local bread.
That seals it.
Mm.
Adding taste anchors the memory to that specific location, linking the experience to unique geographical and cultural details.
So if we connect this back to learning, say you're trying to learn something abstract, like, I don't know, economic principles.
Okay.
You're saying it helps to associate different parts of the theory with, like, distinct mental locations or sensory cues, like imagining one principle in that mountain town, another somewhere else.
Precisely. That process of synthesis, of building a mental place for the information, makes the whole concept easier to map out in your head and retrieve later. You recall the whole town of related ideas, not just one isolated house.
Okay, now let's compare that mountain trip to the Ocean City trip. The goal is the same, describe a place, but the sensory details are completely different.
Totally different palette, right. The focus shifts immediately. Instead of fresh air, it's hearing the waves. Instead of just seeing green, it's the feeling of walking on the beach, the sensation of the cold but bright water when swimming.
Right, much more tactile, and including details like collecting seashells.
Yes. And again, the local flavor anchor is there eating amazing fresh seafood.
Yeah.
But the overall feeling described is refreshing, not calm like the mountains.
So the contrast itself is useful?
Absolutely. By needing to articulate the specific sights, sounds, feelings, and tastes that make the mountain town different from the ocean city, the exercise forces the speaker to use and reinforce distinct sets of vocabulary and descriptive skills. It embeds them in separate, richly detailed memory structures. Context matters.
Okay, powerful stuff. Finally, let's tackle the challenging narratives. You suggested these might be the most valuable for actually learning durable skills. Why is that?
Because they really focus on the process, not just the end result, but the structured steps taken to get past some kind of obstacle, whether it's internal, like nervousness, or external, like a difficult task.
It brings us back to that metacognition idea again, but maybe in higher stakes situations.
Exactly. Look at the work presentation story. The main challenge described is internal, feeling really nervous before a big meeting. The anxiety itself is the barrier.
Right, a very common feeling.
And the story of overcoming it isn't about suddenly finding courage out of nowhere. Success hinges entirely on the described preparation.
The details. Spending hours on the slides, practicing what to say over and over.
Yes. And the breakthrough moment, feeling more confident, happens during the speech, specifically by consciously starting to speak slowly.
Ah, so it's linking a specific action to managing the feeling.
Precisely. It narrates how a psychological hurdle anxiety was managed through deliberate, repeatable effort, practice, and pacing. The positive outcome, getting praise, good job, Sarah, and feeling that huge sense of relief, locks in the lesson.
Which is explicitly stated. Practice makes perfect. Nervousness is normal.
Right. The narrative teaches that emotional regulation in stressful situations isn't magic. It's a skill you build through preparation. It connects the feeling of success back to the work done beforehand.
Okay, now compare that internal battle with the final story, the assembling the bookshelf one. This feels very external, very logistical frustration.
Oh, yeah. Big box, tons of tiny pieces, instructions that are only pictures, a classic recipe for frustration.
Then
Haven't we all? The story clearly marks the point of failure, or near failure. Only getting two pieces together in an hour and suspecting they were probably wrong. That's the peak frustration moment, where the cognitive load is just too high.
So what was the key to succeeding here? It wasn't just pushing harder, was it?
No, and that's the crucial part. The method described is about a conscious reset. Stepping away, taking a break, making tea, physically disengaging for a moment,
Right, creating distance.
and then returning with a different approach. Looking at the pictures again, but very slowly, piece by piece. Shifting from impatient struggle to methodical analysis
And the lesson learned.
is explicitly about process again. Be patient and look at things carefully. This story structure reinforces the value of method, managing your own frustration, emotional regulation again, and breaking down a complex task into smaller steps. It teaches that success often comes not from brute force, but from stepping back, resetting, and analyzing carefully. The positive outcome is linked directly to that specific change in approach.
So these challenging stories really bring everything together, don't they? They seem to use that initial frustration we saw in the learning section, the hard rock bread moment, but they blend it explicitly with a strategy, a described method for overcoming the difficulty.
Exactly. They show that difficulty, when you navigate it with a conscious plan and maybe some patience, leads to the most deeply embedded learning. The knowledge feels earned, and the way you earned it becomes part of the knowledge itself. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. Okay, so this deep dive into what seemed like simple personal stories has actually uncovered a pretty robust framework for thinking about memory and learning.
Yeah, we've walked through these 6 narrative anchors.
Yeah.
Happy, learning, funny, helpful, travel, and challenging.
And the main takeaway, it seems, is that if you deliberately structure new knowledge using these kinds of vivid personal narrative frameworks, well, it's just a much faster and more reliable way to get it into your head and keep it there.
You're essentially hijacking the brain's natural systems for storing meaningful experiences. You're using emotion, senses, social connection, and procedural steps all together. It turns abstract data into something that feels more like lived experience.
So for you listening, if you're tackling something new right now, a skill, a subject, anything, maybe try using this consciously. Try framing your learning process with these structures.
Yeah, ask yourself, when you hit a tough spot, what was that hard rock moment or the frustrating bookshelf feeling? Acknowledge it.
And if something unexpected happens, maybe a funny mistake or a surprising insight, can you frame that as the funny wave moment that snapped your attention?
And crucially, how did you get past the frustration? What method did you use? What was the successful assembly process that led to that feeling of pride or relief? Narrate that solution to yourself.
The source material really highlights the power in simple actions and describing things clearly, connecting them to feelings or context.
It does. So maybe here's a final thought to chew on. Think about the opposite situation. What's some important knowledge or maybe a skill that you tried to learn in the past, but it just didn't stick? It faded away.
Yeah, we all have those.
Trying to analyze that failed learning experience through this lens. Was the memory just too neutral, no emotional hook?
Did you maybe skip over describing the struggle so the success felt unearned or random?
Did you fail to capture the sensory details? The feeling of the place, the taste, the sounds? Was that context missing?
Or maybe you didn't articulate the process of overcoming the difficulty, the sequence of patience and persistence.
Identifying which of these narrative elements was weak or missing in that experience. Well, that might just show you where the weak point in your learning process was. And that's the area you can focus on strengthening next time you want to make sure something truly sticks.